Today we're going to be talking about consumerism and how consumerism is related to the recent issues between Gnarsie and these YouTubers. Now you're probably sitting here listening to this video and going, what the fuck is this guy talking about? What does consumerism have to do with anything of this drama going on? It's basically he said this, aka Gnarsie, and the YouTuber said this. And they're fighting back and forth, and it's a bunch of drama, and it's a he said, she said kind of battle. Now, before I get into that, I think we should go back and talk about consumerism because consumerism is everywhere. We have it in our food industry, we have it in our grocery stores, we have it in our electronics, we have it everywhere, and it's in video games. I mean, we have a say in video games, and I think we've lost that touch a little along the way, and I'm not too sure where. So I'm just going to go a little bit over the history of consumerism, but before I do that, I think we should identify what consumerism is. And right off the bat, you just Google it. It says the protection and promotion of the interest of consumers. So it's in your interest of the consumer. The business is trying to please you and keep you at their business. And this is everything. Like I said, if you're where you get your hair cut, where you buy your shoes, where you buy your clothes, where you buy all your groceries. It is very important that you keep the consumer's interest because if you lose their interest, you're not going to have people anymore. You're not going to have a business. You're going to close down. Well, video games had the same way, and it was very strong. I think stronger back back in the 90s and before that until now, which it's not seems so strong. It seems like we've drifted away from that. What do I mean? Well, starting back before the 90s, you had the Super Nintendo versus Sega and all these other consoles competing for the one of the best. And a lot of people could argue that video games really didn't hit it off because your family members can tell you right off the bat that, hey, I was more active, I was always outside, I was never really inside, I was really not into video games. And you hear that a lot. And that could play a role into how video games and consoles have been successful. Well, the epic battle between Sega, Genesis, and Super Nintendo was really the big one, or Nintendo in general versus Sega. And you had this great battle. You either like Sega, which is pretty much Sonic, or you had pretty much Mario for Nintendo. Now, in the long run, people could argue that Nintendo was late to the game. They just stole these ideas. They really weren't really creative, and their ideas and concepts were just kind of mimicked off of one another. But ultimately, what had happened? We became more Nintendo fans. Nintendo strived, been successful. One of the few systems back in the day that's still running now and competing with the PlayStation and Xbox. But down the line, like I said, it was competing battle, and all of a sudden Sega lost out, been bought out, and Nintendo was successful and moved on. But what does that have to do with the League of Legends content? Well, let's move forward a little bit. Maybe the loss of consumerism start with the DLCs. Because, we didn't really have internet, and once we got into the internet ordeal, we talked, but we didn't, we liked the games we bought, and we pretty much learned from online websites, from Hotaku and other websites of sorts, that, these games are good, or what's wrong with these games, interesting articles and opinion pieces that you didn't really read back in the day. I mean, you had your magazines and your Game Informers, but if you didn't want to spend the money for those, you didn't have that. So you got the internet now, and you have the DLC, and you have these opinion papers, and DLCs at the first were good. They finished, the story was already finished in games, and it was just a little bit more to the story that you kind of got to see, a little bit more play out, and it was great. But somebody took advantage of that. They decided, we're going to use these DLCs in the future to kind of finish our game. You're going to have to buy the DLC to see what happens. You're going to have to finish the game. If you really want to finish the game, you're going to have to buy these DLCs. Maybe it wasn't DLCs. Maybe down the line, it was the pay-to-win games. Maybe ultimately you had to pay to win, and this greed and this ultimately money talking companies. Maybe that's where we kind of lost our balance. Maybe this is where we kind of lost our step. You could go a step further and, early access. You had H1Z1, which had early access, an uncompleted game. A whole uncompleted game, and you paid for early access. And people were paying for early access, and they uploaded their video, and they're like, this is crazy. I'm looting everything. There's nothing here. You could pay for a loot drop, which spawns zombies now and all this jazz. And I've talked to a few people. It wasn't really pay to win. You had to, if you paid for a loot drop, you had to fight through all these zombies. Right? But ultimately, the story is still not completed. You loot stuff. The looting system's kind of broken still. You go through a bunch of things. You find a bunch of garbage, if not anything. The zombie system is not fully implemented, and it's still an uncompleted game, but still being played by consumers. Maybe that's where we lost our kind of mojo. But what does that have to do with League of Legends and the whole drama going on between Gnarsie and the YouTubers? Well, let me move forward a little bit more. We had Gamergate. Gamergate was a notorious issue on the internet for a long time. I mean, it's had many layers, but you take your initial layers, your first layers of Gamergate, and you had these scandalous ideas and these creators, content creators, who were using their ways and their powers to kind of manipulate and suppress information and kind of use their advantage, one way or another, because they had self-interest with one another in a group. And they use this for a way to kind of manipulate the gaming community. Maybe this is where we lost our step in consumerism as a gamer. Why do I say that? It's because we kind of took sides on this. This is where we ultimately really take sides. And yes, you kind of had this in the PlayStation and the Xbox ordeal. You're a PlayStation fan or you're an Xbox fan. And none of these companies really died out because they're balanced. They're fairly balanced for one way or another. Or you're a Nintendo fan, of course. But you're fairly balanced, and these were two well-established companies that were never really going to die out either way, because Sony was a well-established company before their PlayStation, and then you had Microsoft, which was well-established before Xbox. So either way, I don't think neither one of these would die out. But here's another one. These independent content creators. Ooh, excuse me, sorry. These independent content creators, and you had these issues, these self-interest issues, and we were hitting them hard. You had the hashtag for Gamergate, and then all of a sudden things got deeper and deeper, and then people weren't for Gamergate, and then it became mixed issues, and it kind of glumbled and didn't really know what was going on, and we lost kind of self-interest, and it kind of died down. Nobody really talked about it anymore, and the main purpose and the main focus kind of lost interest. We kind of took a side. You were for Gamergate or you weren't for Gamergate. But we really didn't work as a consumer. We didn't really hurt, or when I say hurt, I didn't mean physically hurt. I mean really take people responsible. We didn't stop. We may have stopped supporting these streams. We may have stopped supporting these articles that were written on certain websites. But ultimately, was that hurting them? No, that's not ultimately hurting them. What's hurting them is their sponsors, the people they know, the connections they know, and those are the people you should be messaging. But let's go a step further now. So you got to the League of Legends now. You have this issue, which I'm not going to go into. You can look up your own issues if you want. Look up the videos. I'll link the videos down below, actually. And pretty much Gnarsie calls out a bunch of these YouTubers for a lot of multiple reasons, and seems like they are manipulating and changing their, manipulating and kind of using the system to their advantage. Well, what is this a problem? Yes. And it seems like once again we're taking sides. You're either for Gnarsie and Voric because Voric was on his side, or you're for these YouTubers, these famous YouTubers that you enjoy their content, you like what they do, and it seems like we've kind of not really worked as a consumer. What do I mean by that? Well, Gnarsie makes these videos about these bogus sponsorships. He's made the videos about all these things that these YouTubers are doing, using their YouTube fame for sexual advances on women, and using that as a way to get advanced and kind of take advantage of a woman almost, and then almost stepping a line of what is considered rape, and then the legal age of rape, and you're scratching that line, and as a consumer, you're like, all right, I stopped watching him. I unsubscribed to him. I'm done watching him. Well, that doesn't do anything. Why does that not do anything as a consumer? Yeah, he loses that view and he loses that click on his video and he loses, ultimately could lose a sponsorship, but that doesn't hurt him. That doesn't hurt him as a YouTuber. And I give you a perfect example, and I'll give you a few examples. The first is the YouTuber himself. He came on the vlog. He's like, "Hey, I just got home from vacation. I don't know what's really going on." He didn't really know what's going on. He lost about 2,000 subs, he said. If not, I don't know the exact number right off the top of my head right now. But he's like, "I lost so many subs. I'm not too sure what's going on. Gnarsie made this video, blah 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 blah." And he goes over his sexual history because he was, accused of his taking advantage of these women through sexual advances because of his YouTube power and his YouTube fame. And he wasn't infected by it. See, he didn't care. He's like, oh, if you're not a true loyal fan, I don't really care anyway. Why? Because he had thousands of subscribers. Do you think one subscriber is going to lose him anything? Nah, that's not going to hurt him. Yeah, 2,000 subscribers out of a million. It's not really going to hurt anybody. It's like having a bad dad. Oh, I'm going to play 2,000 on this table. You go gamble it and you're like, I lost it. So what? I didn't lose anything. As a consumer, we lost that, and we started taking sides. Like I said, it was either you're for Gnarsie or for you're not for Gnarsie. Now, what can we do as a consumer now? Well, we can do the same thing we've been doing. Attack what hurts the most, and that is the pocket. Money. This guy has sponsorships. Well, if you really dislike what he's doing, and if he's really breaking the rules, which he did, and he's using his YouTube fame to get sexual advances, or using his YouTube fame for one way or another, for manipulating the system, we should be attacking his sponsors, the people that help him get a career. And you're like, wow, you want to get this guy fired? You want to lose his job? And no, I'm not saying get him fired. I'm not saying that ultimately he should lose his job. But if enough people complain, enough people um, complain and argue and say, hey, this is morally wrong, this is not what we want as a consumer, either the sponsorship is going to hold them as a higher responsibility and be like, hey, you need to fix what you're doing and you need to stop what you're doing or we're going to lose you as a sponsorship or sponsor, or they just remove them altogether. And you're like, wow, I don't know, that's rough. Why would I don't want anybody to lose their job and I don't want anybody to be on the streets. So we're just going to be like taking sides. I'm for him. I'm for him. I just stopped watching him. That should be enough. It's never enough. See, and I'll give you a perfect example. There was this YouTuber. Her name's LaciGreen. She's a feminist on YouTube. You can look her up. I'll probably link her video down below. And she made this video exposing another YouTuber. His name was Sam Pepper. The video's still on there. I'm going to link the direct video. And she pretty much expresses her feelings as a feminist, saying, hey, this is morally wrong. Sam Pepper's like sexually harassing, sexually assaulting these women in his videos, and this is just purely disgusting, right? And the same thing started to happen with the whole Sam Pepper thing. You either believe Sam Pepper, who was a famous YouTuber, they were both very, very famous YouTuber, or you believe LaciGreen. And it was back and forth. I was like, oh, well, some people believe Sam Pepper, some people believe LaciGreen. She took it a step further. She made a follow-up video. She released a video of saying that these people have been sexually assaulted and been sexually harassed by this guy because of his YouTube fame. Does that sound familiar? Oh, now it's clicking. Now it's clicking. Well, believe it or not, Sam Pepper lost all his sponsorships. All his sponsorships dropped him because they didn't want that responsibility. They don't want that on their shoulders, and that's what a consumer does. A consumer goes to the bigger guy and says, hey, this guy that you're sponsoring is doing this. I don't like this. And if there's 10,000, 20,000 people doing this, yeah, the sponsor's going to listen. The person's going to listen, whoever it may be, the big guy. Well, Sam Pepper lost his sponsorship. YouTube, because he was a famous YouTuber, and it said he's no longer invited to any YouTube-related events. So not only did he lose all his sponsorships, not only did he lose his YouTube career, maybe this was a wake-up call, but then Sam Pepper had to go through all the legal legalities of these allegations. Yes, it is this serious, and I think this is a serious topic. And LaciGreen picked this out. It was just the same thing. It's the same thing that's happening in the League of Legends, and all we're doing is picking sides. No one's really complaining. And you can even use Richard Lewis as an example. We can use this whole Richard Lewis thing. You could do the Richard Lewis or the League of Legends mod. Do you believe the mods? Do you see what Richard Lewis is doing? If you believe that Richard Lewis is doing something that is not good in his journalism, and he's clearly doing it for clickbaits, and his journalism is not correct. As a journalist, you're supposed to go in and fact check him then. Go check his sources, contact these people, say, hey, can I ask you about this? Did you talk to him about this? That is what a journalist does. And I'll give you a perfect example. The Rolling Stone actually got recently in trouble with this. They released an article about rapes in school, and I don't know the whole gist of the story, but they probably ran with this article, and they really only had one source. And they're reading this article, and some of the sources and some of the stories in the article was not matching up with what was going on with the police. The police kind of ultimately solved what was going on, and all of a sudden, Rolling Stones had this big article and all these questions and all these people that they said they talked to and all these witnesses that they had that they talked to, and all of a sudden none of these people were showing up. None of these people were talking. None of these people were even existed. Yeah, made up this whole article pretty much. In retrospect, I mean, it's still a serious topic, but they made up a big chunk of the article for, reading purposes and to get everybody's attention, get everybody riled up and mess with your emotions, just like what's going on now. Well, they were under review. They got vetted. What does that mean? The same thing I was just telling you now. If you believe that Richard Lewis's content is false and that this whole content that he's made and his sources are a bunch of baloney and he faked this or that, challenge it. Go. Ask these questions. Be the consumer of that person. And believe it or not, Rolling Stones on the front page actually admitted to this. They openly were like, hey, we've messed up. No, we fucked up. And here's everything that was written on this article. And you can see, it was pages and pages of every little detail that was misconstrued and manipulated and changed and didn't make sense, and there's nothing here, and these sources weren't real, and this person wasn't real, and all this. The story was bullshit. You can, I'm sure I can find it. I'll try and link it down below. If I can't find that, I apologize. But if you know what I'm talking about and you want to link it in the comments, I appreciate it. I'll put it in my description if you do. And this is what you need to do as a consumer. And I think that's why I say we lost our consumerism with League of Legends and what it has to do with the League of Legends drama right now. If these YouTubers are doing illegal things, if these YouTubers are using their fame for sexual advances, or using their YouTube fame one way or another to manipulate or change what they're doing, yeah, they're assholes and are like, oh, I'm not going to watch them anymore. That will show them. Nah, it doesn't make them go away. It's the same thing. Oh, I don't support TSM doesn't mean all of a sudden TSM disappears. Oh, I don't support Cloud9. Oh, Cloud9's gone. As a consumer, you gotta hold them responsible. And that's what journalism did. Richard Lewis actually did this. The MYM situation. You can bring that up. Corey. This situation that you held him responsible. He kept pressing the story. He kept talking about the story. Believe it or not, Riot finally was like, hey, what the hell's going on? And actually changed their ideas, changed what was going on with the whole ordeal. But that is it. I am sorry for ranting. I'm just coming as a consumer myself. I feel like along the lines, and especially with a lot of issues that we've faced on the internet as of recently, it's a he said, she said thing, and that is it. You kind of take your side, the person you like, you take, because it's more believable one way or another. Like I said, the Gamergate issue, if it be the Gnarsie issue, if it be the Richard Lewis issue, whatever the case may be. And I feel like we can do more as a consumer. We can hold these people responsible, and we should be holding these responsible. And you're like, well, what's the line? It's just a YouTuber's the guy. When a guy is like pushing the limit, and he's like, well, the legal age is this in this country. What else is he doing? He's going out partying. He doesn't care. He brags. And it's just not about you stop watching him. You have to think about it this way. You have to think about, all right, I stopped watching him. I stopped supporting him. New person comes along, and they have no idea. They could be supporting the same thing for no idea, because you know why? The community talks about it. It comes in a big cloud or a big wave of information. It all comes out all at once, all it seems, and all of a sudden then it dies down, and nobody talks about it again, and you don't hear about it again. And that's another problem, you know? And this is a bigger problem in politics than really in games. But these issues, you push them all in front, and you're like, all these issues, and all of a sudden it dies down. New people come in, they're supporting them, and they got everybody back. They didn't really lose anybody in retrospect because they believe they new people, and these new people are getting used and can be taken advantage of. So it is important that as a consumer you hold them responsible, you take it where it hurts, and like I said, I'm not really trying to witch hunt, and I'm not saying that you should go to any of these YouTubers and be like, oh, I'm gonna talk to your supervisor and get you in trouble. No, but if they are, they're breaking the rules, and it's kind of fishy, one way or another. But that is it. Thank you all for watching. I am sorry I ranted on and on about it. I appreciate it. If you have any comments or any suggestions, or you want to come back in the comments, I'll try my best to comment to all of you. Thank you again. If you want, subscribe for more of this content. I release videos every Sunday. Thank you very much, and hopefully you all have a great day. Bye, guys.